Yeah, we had that question from Shayne, which I'll sort of read out at the start, but it's
Yeah.
hey, hope all is well. I was wondering whether you find good groups to bike and swim with and to teach techniques. I thought if we could kind of use that as a navigation. Is that okay?
Yes. Although that is a big failing of the swim clubs.
Well, that's why I thought it'd be a good idea to get you on to talk about because I have
Yeah.
heard of. I mean, honestly, the first time I heard of a Masters swim club, because the name is Masters, I thought, well, that sounds quite like intense. Do you know what I mean? So, what is a
Yeah.
Masters swim club exactly?
So masters just means that you're over 18 years old. So if you're under 18, then you just swim, I guess, competitively, like with other people your age. And if you're over 18, then you're just classified as masters. So you don't have to be a really good swimmer. You can be at any skill level. That's just what they call it. And I believe that's all across Canada.
Oh, right, okay,
So the name can
that's.
be very misleading because you tell that to people and they say, wow, you must be really fast. And you're like, well, no, you don't have to be. So
And then, so what's your background in swimming? Have you been like swimming your whole life, or just for a while, or?
Pretty much my whole life. My mom made us take all of our swimming lessons when I was a kid. And then when I was about 10, I joined the swim club in my hometown. So I swam in swim club until I was in high school and then kind of stopped swimming a little in university. And then I got back into it. I joined Masters 2 years ago. So took a bit
Right,
of a
okay.
break, but so we have people that are like me that have been in swim club or they just swam the whole way through, never quit. And then we have people that took swimming lessons or know a little bit of swimming, but don't have a whole lot of skill necessarily. So then the club helps them improve.
And how many people like in a masters swim club typically?
Um, I believe the like in Red Deer, we've had around 30 or 35 the last few years. Calgary, the clubs get really full, so there's actually a wait list to join. I'm not actually sure of their size. Um, right now with COVID, we are allowed to have 48 swimmers, just so that with our two coaches, we're considered one cohort, but we're nowhere near that number.
Right, okay. Well, I guess just to orientate some of the, because we've just started blabbering on about it, but let's
Yeah.
orientate. Some people will be listening and some people will be watching. So
Okay.
we're both in Red
Okay.
Deer, and just to
Yes.
intro you, Candace and I are both physiotherapists and work at Collegiate Sports Medicine. And the Masters Swim Club is in Red Deer, is that right?
Yes. But
And
they
what's
have them all over the place.
right? Okay. And what's the
Yeah.
name of the Red Deer one?
The Red Deer Silver Sharks.
Right, okay. And then if you want to join, is it like how often do you guys meet and all that kind of stuff?
So in Red Deer, we actually have 5 different swim times. You can either swim Tuesday, Thursday afternoon or Tuesday, Thursday evening, and then everybody can swim on Sunday morning. So you can either register to swim once a week or you can register for 3 times per week, and you can go to any practice that you want
Okay.
within like how you're registered.
And then what does it look like when you go? Like how long is it? What kind of workouts are you doing? Is it really hard? Because I know for me it's a little intimidating because especially when I first started swimming, because I went from running to swimming and
That's a big difference.
and it was like I don't know. It's just yeah. I mean, I went swimming when I was a kid, and um, like I went to a swimming club and stuff to learn how to swim. But then I didn't really swim apart from like swimming around in the sea on holiday
Yeah.
until like last year. And I remember just I was like, how do you go swimming? And I would look at the rec center, and it was like lane swimming and
Yeah.
public swimming, and even that confused me. So,
Yes.
what's the difference between lane and public swimming?
So public swimming would be like what you would take your children to if you want to go fool around in the pool or if you want to play like at the wave pool or on the water slides or just, like throw a ball around or there's other kind of different things. Lane swimming is all of the lanes are separated by lane ropes, and you just swim back and forth for however long that you want to. So if kids are going to go, they also have to, just swim back and forth across the pool. Some people will walk in the pool in the slower lanes, so that's usually okay. But yeah, lane swimming is if you were going to swim to train for something or for fitness. And public
So
swimming is just like a free for all at the pool.
yeah, so that's and then you get some that are public slash lane swimming, right? So it's like, is it like half the pool is lanes and half is like kids messing around?
Yeah, they usually would have a couple of lanes blocked off for people that just want to swim laps, and then the rest of the pool would be open for people to just kind of play around and have fun, or use the hot tub or the sauna or things.
And when you're swimming with the, what do you call it, the silver sharks?
Yeah.
Um, do you guys sort of reserve the whole pool and then all the lanes are just for your club, or do you have half where it's like anyone is coming in and using them, or it's and like 2 or 3 lanes where just you guys are in them? Like, how does that
Yeah.
work?
So on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, because afternoons aren't a very popular time, a lot of people work full time. They just have 2 lanes reserved. Um, I don't know what happens with the rest of the pool if it's regular lane swimming time because I've never gone to those practices. But in the evenings and on Sundays, we have the entire pool reserved. So it's just masters that's there at that time.
Okay, so the Masters Club reserves the pool sometimes, but
Yeah.
then some of the quieter times, not so much if there's not so many
Yeah.
people attending that session usually.
Yeah. And so what it looks like is practices are either 60 minutes or 90 minutes. And all of the lanes are separated by lane ropes. So at the Michener pool is the one that we often swim at. There's 6 lanes. So you have between 1 and 4 people in your lane, depending on your skill level. So you're split up. Sometimes you kind of split yourself up if you know who's coming to practice that day. When you first start out, the coach will ask you, what your swim level is. They usually just get you to swim a lap or two, and they kind of put you in a lane where people are a similar speed.
And then
So that,
so say I'm a newbie and I go and
yeah,
so there's a coach for every session. There's
yeah,
like okay,
yeah.
and
So
then
they're like a certified swim coach. Credentials I'm not entirely sure of, but yeah, right now we have 2 coaches, and they've been coaching for several years. So
so say they put me in the thing and they're going to determine where I'm going to go in terms of the different lanes are going to have different skill levels, and
yep,
they're going to try and put me in the right one so I'm not going too hard or too ezy. So they're
yep.
going to ask me to swim a couple of lengths. Now, am I supposed to go like as hard as I can, or am I supposed to pick a comfortable speed? Like, how do I do that bit?
I think it's just up to you. Like, even just probably watching you swim 10 or 15 meters gives them an idea of, okay, like this guy's, he doesn't put his face in the water, or, different things like that. Or no, he can't actually do front crawl. So, yeah. And as your skill level changes, they might tell you to move up. So I know swimmers that have started out in the slowest lane, and then they'll come to practice one day and the coach will say, no, swim here today. And you maybe do a little bit of a harder workout, or this, I guess the same workout, but over a shorter period of time. So
So that's a good question because I remember when I
yeah,
first went, you get in the pool and you're so, it's like sometimes when you go back to the gym, you're just so convinced that everybody's looking at you and thinking, what an idiot. Why are they doing that? I had running shorts because I didn't have anything else to wear. I had
okay,
like an old crusty pair of goggles and I went in the
okay,
slow lane and I seemed a bit too fast because there was people walking in that lane. So
yeah,
I moved to the next one and I was struggling to keep up. And then I wasn't sure what the etiquette was for whether I should like stand at the side or do you know what I mean? Like when I was taking a rest where you should stand. So there was all
yeah,
these little like things that made me feel very uncomfortable. And so a lot of people that listen to this will be runners and, you know,
yeah,
I, so what is, I mean, so that I went through it and now when I go
yeah,
to the pool, I'm quite comfortable. But at first, it was really nerve wracking. If you if you're like me and you were just running and you were like, I want to take up swimming because it's good cross training and I want to try something new, but you haven't swum in a while, you don't have all the gear, you don't
yep,
know about like when to go, would masters swim clubs be a good place, or should you sort of get your feet wet, as it were, go a
I
few
would
times on your
I would
own?
start with masters. Honestly, I've been thinking about swimming a lot the last couple of days, and like if you're just getting into it, instead of struggling through it on your own, it's a lot easier if you have somebody coach you. Like we have swimmers of all levels. There's one swimmer who started this year having to practice putting their face in the water. And
Right,
there's one swimmer who I believe almost made an Olympic swim team when he was younger. So there's
right.
everything in between. So if you don't really know what you're doing, coming to the pool is a really good idea, because like the more experienced swimmers, the coach gives us a workout, and then if someone really needs help or has lots of questions, he goes over and spends a lot of time working with them and giving them like separate like special drills or different things to do, and really helps them work on things. So instead of just going and struggling on your own and trying to figure out what you read online or different
Hmm.
things like that, like the coaches they'll teach you, and other swimmers can help you too.
Yeah, because
And
there's going to be more
yeah,
experienced swimmers there like yourself who aren't the coach necessarily, but
yeah,
they can just kind of give you a helping hand. So
yeah.
what about if you're a runner and you're an adult and you didn't learn to swim when you were a kid? Is this a good place to go, or should you look for like adult swim lessons? What
You would
would
need
you?
adult swimming lessons. So you need to know how to swim to join masters. So if you don't know, what front crawl is or back crawl, or you don't know how to kick your feet, then you would, or you don't know how to breathe out into the water. Those would be things that you would want to take swimming lessons for. So they won't actually teach you how to swim if you don't know how. But if you have, maybe you made it through a few of your, I don't even know what swimming lessons, like maybe you made it to level 6 out of level 10 of swimming lessons when you were a kid. You should at least know in theory how to swim a little bit and, tread water and that type of thing. But if you don't know how to swim at all, then you're looking at adult swimming lessons.
And what would be a good gauge? Is it like, if you can swim 15 minutes on your own without sinking, is that like, okay, then you can go to masters. But if you
I
can't
mean,
do
if you
that,
can
go.
swim one length of the pool, you can, if you can swim all the way, the 25
Yep.
meters across, then I would say start out in masters. If
Okay,
you
cool.
have no idea how to get from one end of the pool to the other, you're probably looking at swimming lessons.
Okay, cool. And then, so again, we're coming back to someone like me, right? I know how to swim, basically.
Yep.
And I'm thinking about getting back into swimming, but I haven't swum much as an adult, right? I was only running until last year. And
Yep.
then what do I need to get? Because like again, I had to sort of figure out the gear as I went, and I wanted to kind
Yeah.
of share what would have been good things to have. Do you need a lot of gear? Do you need those toys? Do you need like what do you need to get started?
So really, number one, I would say goggles. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody since I was a small child swim without goggles. It's very uncomfortable to do that. And if you're a woman, you want to look for a one-piece bathing suit, like a bikini, something that you might have to worry about falling out of or falling down. You don't want that. So like a one-piece bathing suit. And then as a guy, not like swim trunks, like baggy shorts. They're gonna weigh you down a lot. So you don't have to wear the little Speedo that people think of.
That is a specific question I had.
Yeah.
So
Only
I've
one
never worn a
member
swim
wears a
speedo.
Speedo.
Okay, okay. So speedo
Only,
is quite uncommon.
okay.
So what do the guys wear?
So a lot of them wear what are called jammers, which are like a longer short that they're tight, they're snug fitting. They come about mid thigh, or some of them will wear more like a boxer brief length
Hmm.
swim short as well. So as long as it's snug fitting, then that's
Okay.
what you're looking for. You're not going to get that drag.
And I mean, if you're either going to search it online or if you're going to go to a store, I mean, a one-piece bathing suit, I think most
Yep.
women would, I mean, even I think I understand how to look for that. But
Yep.
a guy, like, what would you type in? What do you, because I would think Speedos, but I don't know, I wouldn't feel comfortable wearing Speedos. So these other things you mentioned,
Yeah.
what kind of shop do you go to, or what do you search online if you're looking for that stuff?
men's swimsuit.
Okay.
So I think they call them jammers, which are the longer length shorts. I can't remember what the one in between the mid thigh length short and the little
Hmm.
speedo banana hammock. I can't remember what those ones are called.
So men's bathing shoots, shorts or jammers, and jammers is like JAMMERS.
Yes.
Okay. And then goggles, what are we looking for there? Do we have to spend a lot of money? Do we want to get the cheapest pair we can find?
You
What?
don't have to spend a lot of money. Couple of things to think about is if you're going to be swimming indoors or outdoors. If you're swimming outside, having darker tinted goggles can be nice. I don't like that because in the pool inside it's not as bright and they do get foggy. I know there was a question around that. So I have a clear pair. Actually, both of mine are clear so that I
Hmm.
can see. Something that I like is under the eyepiece. If this is foam, the foam will kind of get separated and eat away, and then you can get leaks in your goggles.
Right.
So this one, it's all kind of one piece together, if you can see that.
Yeah.
One good thing is if the goggles have a nose piece that's adjustable. Some of them will come with different size nose pieces because when you put them on your face, if you can take them out and try them on, if you stick them, here we go into videos, if you stick them to your eyes, you should be able to have them stick to your face.
Oh, right.
So the
Okay.
straps are here, and if they don't stick, if you can't get them to stay on, they're probably too big in the eye area, so then you're going to get lots of leaks in them.
Right.
So the
Okay. Well, I
straps you
wish
can
I'd known
adjust,
that.
but yeah, so this eyepiece, this one took me a while to figure out how to get it adjusted. So like it's a lot bigger, but I can still get it to stay on my face. But again, this one
Right.
popped off, so it's a lot wider of a lens than the other one.
And is
And yeah,
there
goggles,
a sorry.
they're not that expensive. I think they're around $20.
Yeah,
So
even the good ones are not terribly expensive, right?
no, they're not. And they will over time, they'll break down from the chlorine in the pool, so they won't last forever. The one pair that I have here, I've used for just over 2 years and it's holding up really well.
Yeah. And do yours fog up? Because mine fog up all the time.
That I don't know anybody who can have their goggles not fog up. So
Right.
they usually come with a coating on them. Something that you want to try not to do is try not to get water like on the inside of the goggle because there's usually an anti-fog coating there. So
Hmm.
I know I've seen swimmers who will dip their goggles in the pool and that helps that wear down a little bit faster. You can buy anti-fog sprays. I've never
Hmm.
tried them, but I did have a client who was in the Red Deer Swim Club like as a teenager, and I asked her one day, and she said they just fog up. So I don't know
Yeah,
how to make that stop happening.
yeah, I was thinking about this. I can't imagine there is a way because it's probably the fog. I don't know exactly, but it's probably something related to the coolness of the water versus the temperature of your body. Is that what's going on
Yeah.
with the fog?
And generally, the longer that you swim, like when I start in a workout, it takes them longer to fog up. And the newer pair that I have takes longer to fog up than the older pair, but they fog up by the end of the workout. So usually, like if I take a break, I'll just kind of wipe them with my thumbs to get the fog off, keep going.
And you're wiping the outside or the inside?
The inside, yeah.
And you said, because I didn't know this, you said try not to. So when you get in the pool, you should already have them on your eyes, so you're not getting the inside of the goggles wet.
Or on your forehead. Like usually I put my cap on and then I put my goggles on and they're, sitting up, they're twisted. They're sitting up on my forehead and then you hop in the water and then I'll put them down when you go to start swimming.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. Because yeah, I always dip them in the water to when they start to fog up. I dip them in to get the fog off, but I should rub them.
Yeah. Well, I use my thumbs because yeah, I've kind of learned over the years that if you continuously dip them in the pool, well, the chlorine, the pool water is going to eat away the anti-fog coating. I
Ah,
mean, it's still
okay.
on my thumbs, but it's a little bit less than if you're actually dipping it in the water.
Well, I think it's too late for my current pair, but my next pair
Yeah.
can I can
And
follow that.
it'll still happen. I mean, I've done that with both of my pairs and they both start to fog too.
Oh.
So I don't
Yeah, and I
have a
mean,
solution for that.
some of the people listening to this will be, getting into triathlon and stuff, which is what I was doing. So it's probably
Yeah.
worth mentioning there because yours are clear, but I know once you start going to open water swimming, so you're swimming outside in
Yeah.
lakes and rivers and stuff like that, my goggles have like a it almost looks like sunglasses when you look at them
Yeah.
from the outside. And I believe that's to help with the reflections of the sun off the water and this
Yeah.
kind of like having sunglasses on essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a personal preference, and yeah, it depends on where you're swimming. I do have 2 pairs of dark tinted goggles, and I only use them now if I somehow would lose the 2 pairs that I have. Like, I have them, but I don't like them, but I also only swim indoors.
So that's what you meant by dark tinted. It was this kind of as if the
Yeah, or
sunglasses.
some of
Yeah.
them are mirrored and they look like, yeah, like sunglasses.
That's what mine are. Yeah. Because you can't really see my eyes when I have them on.
Yeah, and I do have 2 pairs of dark tinted ones, but I didn't bring them to my prop pile.
And what about
But
swimming caps? I mean, I don't wear one because I'm bald, but should I? And does everybody need one? Like, what's up with swimming caps?
if you are racing, so as at masters, so if you're over 18, you can still go to swim meets. They do have swim meets, not currently with COVID, but they do have
Mm.
them. So if you're really concerned about speed and time and shaving off the milliseconds, wearing a swim cap, whether or not you have hair, unless you've completely, shaved your head right to the skin, I would say anybody who's got hair longer than an inch or two would probably want a swim cap. With a lot of people, it's because when you're swimming, your hair will get in your eyes.
Mm.
And as a woman, even if you put your hair, if a man with longer hair, if you put it in a ponytail, the little bits are still going to get out. It's going to get in your eyes. It will slow you down. I haven't swam without a swim cap in probably since before I was 10 years old. I've also gotten my hair tangled in my goggles. So if you have anything longer than, a typical man's haircut, I would say getting a swim cap. Or if
Okay.
you spent a lot of money dyeing your hair, you might want to keep as much
Ah, the
chlorine water out of
chlorine.
it as you can.
Yeah. See, these are things that never occur to me. So
Yeah.
that's good to know. For when I grow my hair long and dye it red, I'll I'll
Yes.
know. So,
Yes.
I mean, I've never actually worn a swim cap, so this has
Okay.
always baffled me. But it's one of those. I guess this is the theme of this episode is like questions you feel too stupid to ask. So I'm
No,
asking
that's
them all
okay.
now.
Like, ask
So
away.
my next one is if you're a girl and you've got, well, I guess like anyone with long hair, and you put a swim cap on before you go in the pool, and then you go and swim for like half an hour, and then you get out and you take your swim cap off, is your hair dry or
Yeah.
is it wet?
It's wet. So, something that my mom actually asked me about when I was a teenager is why don't swim caps keep your hair dry?
Right.
Swim caps are not meant to keep your hair dry. So, they're meant to make you a little more streamlined so you go faster, but also keep your hair out of your face. So, water does get under the cap. It's not a tight seal. A lot of the time, they want you to shower before you get in the pool anyway. So, your hair is wet before you get in the pool.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they're not meant to keep your hair dry.
Right.
It'll
Okay.
keep it a little bit drier, but it'll still get wet.
Well, again, and then that's a question that some runners who are thinking about getting into a bit of swimming might be
Yeah.
concerned about. It never occurred to me, but if you have had your hair dyed or you've had it done
Yeah.
recently, is going swimming going to mean that you end up going back to the hairdressers sooner than if you weren't swimming, if you were just running?
I mean, maybe. I don't dye my hair. Like if you're in the pool regularly, like my understanding is when you dye your hair, the more often you wash it, the
Hmm.
quicker the dye comes out. So if you're swimming for an hour or so and then you're washing your hair a few times a week, maybe extra after, then I would say it probably would fade faster. But most women out there color their hair, and there are a lot of them at the pool.
Right, okay. And they don't sort of lament how they're ending up going to the hairdresser every like second week because of it.
I've not heard that from anybody. You can also buy, and what I would recommend if you have blonde hair or like gray hair, white hair is getting a clarifying shampoo to remove the chlorine.
Oh,
because
okay.
it does kind of build up in your hair, and it gives it a really kind of strange feel. Like you can often, if you haven't washed the chlorine out of your hair feels kind of gross and crusty. And when
Hmm.
I was a kid, I actually had my hair turn like it had a green tint to it. So in fluorescent light, you would see my blonde hair and it had like a green tint. So that it
Okay.
is a concern if you have light hair or if you're paying to dye your hair blonde. Um,
So to mitigate that, you would get what kind of shampoo?
just a clarifying shampoo. Some of
Clarifying.
them will
Okay.
say like swimmer shampoo, or I think I just went to the hair salon and looked for a clarifying shampoo and read the back, and it specifically said to remove chlorine from swimmer's
All
hair.
right. Okay.
So
And
you
then
can
should
buy
you use
shampoos like
that
that.
on your exit from the pool every time, or is it just like do it once a week, or like
I use it after every time I swim.
this is fascinating. I didn't know
Yeah.
any of this. Okay.
But I've also
That
seen swimmers just use regular shampoo after swimming, even if they have blonde hair and their hair didn't look green. So maybe I'm the exception.
okay. I guess I'm picturing like bright, luminous green hair.
No, no, it's kind of like, well, you know how if someone has to say dark brown hair and they've got a little bit of red highlights in it, you can kind of see a little bit of a red tint in certain lights.
Right. Okay. So
So it would be like
it's
that,
not too
except the
intense.
tint in my hair was green.
Okay. Well, that brings me to my next point. I
Okay.
don't know if this is a thing that happens to other people or if it just happened to me, but I bought triathlon shorts to swim in. I don't know if you know what
I
they
don't
are.
know what triathlon shorts are.
So you know those jammers you mentioned?
Yep.
I think they're like those. They're essentially like
Okay.
they look like cycling shorts, right?
Okay.
But you can swim in them. And
Okay.
in the butt bit, there's like a pad, but it's not a really thick pad. So if I
Okay.
get this right, I believe cyclists often buy cycling shorts that have a very thick pad that you
Yeah.
it's kind of like a nappy to sit on.
Okay. Yep.
It's not for if you poo yourself, it's for if you're just
It's just
like
for cushion. Yep.
for a cushion, yeah. But in triathlon, the triathlon shorts have a thinner pad. I think this is right,
Okay.
and I think that's because you're going to get out of the out of the water, and it's you don't want a really thick pad because it'll be like drenched, and then you'll
Yes.
have to sit on this drenched pad because then you're going to get straight on the bike, and then you're going to run. So you have a thinner pad. Now,
Okay.
the question I had, those triathlon shorts, I was just like, well, I'll wear those for my swimming rather than the
Hmm.
running shorts because at least I look a little bit more like I fit in. But they sort of disintegrated. They didn't disintegrate, but they.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. So if you're going to be training and swimming, you're going to want to get a training bathing suit. So you would save your triathlon shorts for days that you're racing.
Hmm.
So they actually, if you like the typical swimsuit that you would buy, you're going on holidays, you're just going to go and get like a Lycra spandex bathing suit. Those don't hold up very well in chlorine water because there's so many chemicals
Oh.
in a public pool, or if you're in a saltwater pool, they break down really quickly. They get really stretched out and baggy. They only last a few months.
Hmm.
So if you're looking for, often when you're looking like on bathing suit websites, or if you're in the store, they'll say that they're a training suit, or they'll say endurance. So the
Hmm.
endurance means that it's more of, I believe it's polyester. So it's a thicker fabric and it feels different than what you would think of as a typical swimsuit. And it's just to have them hold up to the chlorine water better so that you would train in that. And then that will last longer and not get eaten away by the pool water like your poor triathlon shorts did. So often
Okay.
people will buy training suits because they're thicker and they're made of a different material. And then at a meet, like if you've watched the Olympics, often you'll see them with, the really high neck, and they have, men and women both have, knee length shorts, and there's kind of
Hmm.
specific suits for competing in. But you wouldn't train in one of those because they're very expensive and it's not going to last very long in the pool.
Right. I wish someone had told me that before. Next pair,
Sorry.
I'm going to look after. So next pair, I want some triathlon shorts and I want some training jammers. That's what I
Yeah.
need. Okay. Right. I think that takes care of gear, doesn't it? I think we know what gear we need if we're going to get
Yeah,
into
and that's
swimming.
really all you need. There are extra things like kickboards, or I call them flutterboards, or hand paddles, fins slash flippers, pull buoys. So you don't need any of that stuff.
Hmm.
Most pools have that available for you to use. Even with COVID, it's just that you put it in a bin to be cleaned after. So you don't have to buy anything. You really just need goggles and a bathing suit and possibly a swim cap.
Okay. Well, I have lots of questions following up about the training, but I didn't
Okay.
ask you how, like, do you need to go, like, how long do we have you for?
I have nothing else planned for today. So,
Okay.
well,
Well,
maybe
we'll see
carving
how
a
many
pumpkin
questions I
later.
can ask. Sorry?
Maybe carving a pumpkin later, but that's it.
Oh, yeah, I haven't done that. Okay. I haven't even got a pumpkin. So,
Yeah, me neither.
um, I have more questions about the master's group session. So let's say I
Okay.
go to one and they sort of determine that I'm going to go say in the one of the slower lanes. What
Yep.
and it's 60, 90 minutes. I mean that might be intimidating for people who don't usually swim. So do you, do some people just go for part of the session? Like how hard are these workouts? How much resting are you doing? All that kind of stuff.
So you don't have to go for the whole session. Most people will end up staying the whole time. You're not swimming for 60 or 90 minutes nonstop.
Hmm.
So typically, what happens is you show up and the coach gives you a warm up. So he's got a couple of whiteboards that he writes on. So he writes down what the warm up is. And that'll depend on, again, your skill level. He'll kind of say, okay, like you people over here, you're going to do this. And then you people over here, you'll do this. So you go, you warm up, you can swim completely at your own speed if you want to rest for 5 minutes halfway through, if you want to stand on the deck and talk instead of warming up, that's an option too. And then typically, like earlier in the season, they definitely go a little bit easier on you because most people don't swim, in between the seasons. So he gives you different workouts. So maybe you'll work on a few sets of kick, or you'll work on pull, or you'll just practice swimming different lengths. So generally, they give you, you're going to swim, 50 meters 4 times. So you'll
Okay.
have to learn how to count pool lengths by meters.
Hmm.
It's not that hard, but you'll have to do that. And he may say, okay, you'll take this much rest in between them, or you'll do them on this amount of time. So you would do that, and then you take a little bit of a break after. Sometimes you'll practice doing different drills. So if you know different drills to practice, you can pick your own. Sometimes he'll give you ideas of different drills that you can practice. So you swim for a little while, you stop and rest. There's
And that,
usually a fair bit of socializing that happens. So sometimes resting is longer than other times.
and so the say you're going to do drills. Is this
Yep.
drills designed to improve your swimming technique?
Yes. So the good thing about swimming with masters is that, especially if you're starting out, doing shorter distances so that you don't get too tired. Because if you try to go and swim 20 lengths of the pool and you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be very, very tired. And you're probably going to be really discouraged. So
Hmm.
you practice doing shorter distances so that you can recover. Drills, there's for every stroke, there's all kinds of different drills, and they're designed to help you work on your technique. So
Right.
getting better at
So
your technique is how you get to be a more efficient swimmer.
and what I mean, yeah, that's definitely something I experienced. Like I would go and swim before work in the morning, and at first I was doing 20 or 30 minutes, and I was resting quite a bit, like every 4 to 6 lengths I would rest.
Yep.
And I was like exhausted at work, and that
Yep.
went on for weeks. It took me so long to build up any tolerance, and I think it was partially that I got a little better at swimming, so it wasn't so inefficient. But also, I think just because it's different, you're working all these other muscles, and I was
It
in good shape. I
is.
ran a lot at the time. I was running, half and full marathon distance. I was training quite a bit. It wasn't a
Yeah.
cardio fitness thing, but yeah, I was just half asleep. I would drink like 6 cups of coffee at work on the days I went for a
Yeah.
swim in the morning.
So I feel your pain. When I started swimming, again 2 years ago when I joined Masters, I think it had been 5 years since I had last actually gone lane swimming. And I like grew up swimming. So I had like decent technique. And I think I was exhausted for the first 6 weeks of the season, just
Mm.
tired all the time. So even if you are a swimmer, if you haven't swam in a long time, like it does take a while to get used to. So, and
Yeah, and
it does get easier with time.
it does, and it's a different type of tired, I notice. Like with running or biking or weight training, it's sort of muscular soreness, whereas I didn't feel any specific. It wasn't like my shoulders got really tired or anything. It was more just
Okay.
general fatigue. You know what I mean?
Just,
Did you?
yeah, just generally
Was yours
tired.
more experienced like specifically in the arms or like what? Do you know what I mean? I felt like
Yeah. I
it was kind
remember,
of easier on my body in some ways. It wasn't so
yeah.
specific. It was just a general fatigue.
Yeah, and I think for the first week or two, I maybe just had stiff muscles everywhere, but then it
Okay.
was just general fatigue. Like I
Yeah.
was just, I'd walk up the stairs and, oh, I lost my headphones. I'd walk up the stairs and just be exhausted by the time I climbed to the second floor of the building that I worked in. And so, yeah, I was just generally tired for a few weeks. And I did go from not swimming at all to swimming 3 times a week. So maybe swimming
Right.
once a week would be a better way to start, or even twice a week. Like if you register for 3 times a week, you don't have to go 3 times a week. You can go
Hmm.
twice a week.
Well, I think it depends on what you want to get out of it, really, because I think a lot
Yeah.
of, I mean, most of the runners I see in the clinic are injured, right? And I'm always
Yeah.
trying to sell them on biking and swimming as ways of keeping up their cardio fitness and not stepping backwards because of their injury, because inevitably
Yeah.
they have to reduce their running volume. And, you know, if you want to feel that kind of for training fatigue, you know, really feel like you're progressing in terms of your cardiorespiratory fitness. Swimming, I think, is a awesome alternative because it doesn't sort of, you know, your feet
Oh,
don't
yeah.
hurt you. If you've got knee pain, it doesn't affect that usually. It's a great way to cross train when you're
Yeah.
injured.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a full body workout, which is part of it. Like you're biking, mostly your legs, running
Mm-hmm.
again, like your legs, but you're using your whole body with your swimming, and you're using your core a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and
So, but yeah, it's definitely, it's it's exhausting when you're not used to it.
yeah, and yeah, I'm sort of taking a little while off. I took some time off because the pool's shut, and then I'm not
Yeah.
going to be swimming for the next couple of months. I'm going to just work on strength training and then start again at Christmas. And I'm
Yeah.
fully expecting this sleepiness to come back
Hopefully you
again.
shouldn't be as tired. Because between like my first season and my second season swimming, I think I went lane swimming just once on my own. And coming back in September after taking, a couple of months off, it wasn't nearly as hard as it was, the first year after taking 5 years off. And then
Mm,
even now with the pandemic, it had been 6 months since I had swam, and it's still like you're tired, but nowhere near that level of exhausted. So if you've built up a little bit of a tolerance, you don't go right back to square one. So you should hopefully not be as exhausted as you were.
yeah, and that fits with other sports, doesn't it? Like when I know when I've taken time off rock climbing and then gone back to it, you know, you get your fitness back quicker. So it sort of
Yeah.
fits. Yeah. The Sorry, I forgot what I was going to ask, but it was quite specific. Um, yeah, so we were talking about when we were talking about what to talk about in this episode. I was saying that, you know, it's something I often try and sell runners on, right? Especially because they're
Yep.
injured usually when they're seeing me. And
Yep.
I find with running, when I get a lot of people say, I want to take up running, and I give them these like really careful, like couch to 5Ks or interval running programs. And do you know what I mean?
Okay.
I get them to go really slowly, build up
Yep.
like a tiny bit at a time, because running injuries are so prevalent, right? They're like
Yeah.
50% per year kind of thing of runners will get injured roughly. I mean, and then we were chatting about whether there might be some common swimming injuries. And, we're saying, as you get into swimming, it's quite tiring at first, especially if you go 3 times a week. But then I was thinking, do you have to be as careful if you're taking up swimming? Because there's no impact. I personally, as a physio, I can count on one hand the number of swimming injuries I've seen in my career. Have
Okay.
you seen a lot? Is it very
I've
common for swimmers to be injured?
It's common for swimmers to get shoulder pain.
Right.
So, and that's with, I think I've seen that I can recall, one other injury from swimming, which just happened to be kind of a freak concussion that happened.
Oh,
The
man.
person was doing a flip turn and they hit their head on the bottom of the pool.
Oh.
But otherwise, it seems to be shoulders. So
Hmm.
I think a lot of that is because the shoulder is kind of a vulnerable structure to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, if you don't have good technique with swimming, so if you're not, again, sure what you're doing and you haven't necessarily been trained, then the technique that you're using can make you more susceptible to having an injury.
And what might
So
that look
there's
like? How might I be adopting a technique that's putting me in a bad spot?
So typically, I'm just going to talk about front crawl, or what we call freestyle, because that's what most people do, is they're going to just do front crawl. And when you're swimming, what you want to do when you're bringing your arm out of the water is you keep your elbow high. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people will bring their arm all the way around like a windmill with a straight arm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the motion that tends to get people into trouble.
Is that because it's a longer lever arm essentially, so the stress on the shoulder per stroke is going to be higher if you've got your arm out straight as opposed to bringing a bent elbow through?
I don't know the answer to that question. As a physio, probably I should, but I don't really know the answer to that question. It's
Okay.
just one of those things that's always been there and it's always been stressed, and I never thought too much about why that was.
Well,
So
I think as well, the other thing that occurs to me, and again, like if I have seen swimmers over the years, they've been shoulder injuries, right? That's the
yeah,
only things I can remember seeing. I wonder as well because there's a couple of things. So one is particularly in older people, when you get them to twist, right? They've often lost a
yeah,
bit of mobility in their thoracic spine to
yeah. So
rotate.
that's a big one, and shoulder blade stability too. Like you can have a swimmer with great technique who gets a sore shoulder because their shoulder blade stabilizer muscles aren't working, or their thoracic spine is stiff. So those are other things that can contribute.
And is there, if you're going to get into swimming, is there a way you would potentially approach it to try and avoid these things? Or is it more just go slow and if your shoulders are getting sore, go and see a physio or an athletic therapist and have them looked at? Like, how should you approach it if you're just getting into it?
I definitely think going slow is a good idea. If you have access to like get coaching or training, that's helpful. Working on things like rotator cuff strengthening or like scapular stabilization exercises would also be a good thing, because there are lots of people that ask a lot of their shoulders and they never ever work on strengthening their rotator cuff.
Okay.
So
Well, I don't want to take a deep dive into that too much just because I feel like that's going to take another hour or two. But
yes.
just in a simple way, what's the rotator cuff? What's scapular stabilizers? How might you, like, one or two simple exercises you might do to sort of strengthen those to help you stave off any potential shoulder injuries there?
So rotator cuff, there are four muscles. They sit around your shoulder blade. They basically stabilize your humerus, so the upper bone in your arm. They stabilize that into the shoulder socket. So easy way, if you have a resistance band or a dumbbell, is to just tuck your elbow in, and if you're either standing with your band, you're pulling out to the side against your resistance here, or laying on your side, you would do the same thing, pulling going the other way. Those
Mm-hmm.
are often really common physio exercises. Doing shoulder blade squeezes, so muscles to keep your shoulder blades kind of more glued against your rib cage where they should be, instead of forward, how I've been sitting for the last hour.
Yeah, me too.
So doing, squeezing your shoulder blades together, or doing rows or lat pull downs. Those are good ones too, especially if you're mainly working on front crawl. is you're using a lot more of the front of your shoulder and the front of your body, as opposed to if you actually flip over and do backstroke. Now you can work at the back of the shoulder a little bit more, but a lot of people just stay on their front when they're swimming because it's easier.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I would add to that to look at the mobility of your, let's say your twisting mobility, but what we're talking about here is the thoracic spine, which is your thoracic spine is like where your ribs are. The way I tell people to have a quick check of that is to stand with your back to a mirror and put your feet together, and then twist your whole body and try and look at yourself in the mirror.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And then
Yeah,
if
that's
you
a really good
can't,
one.
yeah, if you can't turn around and like see yourself, if you only get like halfway and you're sort of craning your neck, then you probably
Yeah.
should do some stretches to loosen up your twisting, which,
Yeah.
you could Google something like a pretzel stretch or a spine twist stretch. And essentially,
Yeah.
it's just anything that twists that part of your body, because if you're stiff there, then you're going to have to put your shoulder further back as you're swimming.
Yeah.
Your shoulder's going to have to go more back behind you because you're not twisting your thorax to allow it
Yeah.
to come through more comfortably.
And when you're swimming, you should be also rolling your whole body. So rolling from your hips. There's different strategies for rotation. You can either rotate out of your hips or out of your shoulders. It's easier if you try to think about turning your hips when you're swimming. So that'll
Yeah,
take some of the pressure off your shoulders too, is that
right.
you
Yeah.
actually rotate. So when you've brought your hand into the water, you would rotate your hips to roll your body. So you're actually rolling, because that hip rotation will make it easier on your shoulders than if you're trying to rotate through the upper half.
So this is where it comes in when you're saying, like, if you want to try and avoid shoulder injuries, like having good technique is a good way to do. And that might be where something where like a
Yeah.
master's club would come in, because like what you just said, I didn't even know that. So that's good
Yeah.
advice. So when you're swimming,
Yeah.
your hand, say your right hand comes over, you put your right hand in and you're sort of pulling back on the water. As I'm pulling back, do I actually want to be sort of my tummy is facing down towards the bottom of the pool, or do I want to be sort of slightly on my side as I'm pulling through?
So you want to be on, so after your hand has entered the water, you want to rotate, to reach further. And then, yeah, when you're pulling through to bring your hand by your hip, you would kind of rotate more so that your stomach is facing the floor of the pool.
Yeah.
Then you would go the other direction because your other hand has entered the water. So you're not swimming flat like a barge going through the water, is you're trying to rotate your body side to side.
Yeah, and that's something I noticed I was doing a lot at first. It was almost like I was a 2x4 kind of floating along, and then my arms would do this, and then I would turn my head.
On your shoulders.
Right. Yeah, and your neck.
Yes.
I noticed.
So that's going to make your shoulders and your neck very sore. I had a bit of maybe an argument with a patient once about turning your head when you were swimming. And I said, well, you don't turn it very much because you roll your body. And they were convinced that, yes, you turn it quite far. And I had to think about it. And you do turn it when you're swimming, but if you're turning your neck a lot, it's because you're not rotating your body enough.
Yeah,
so,
and I think
you have to turn your neck a bit, but it should be mostly coming with your body rotation.
Well, I like what you were saying about turning with the hips, right? Because then it's almost like you're sort of twisting the bottom of a tennis racket or something. The twist is coming from lower down. Yeah, and that's a nice way of thinking about it. And then with your hand, so this is something I think I was doing at first, and then I watched some YouTube videos, and I think it got better. But essentially, as your hand enters the water, and then you're pulling through, and I think what I was doing is keeping the elbow quite straight, and it was sort of coming through like a big arc. But that's not quite right, is that?
Thing.
Yeah.
It's
so
not
what
quite
should
right.
we do?
And that's something that I have been working on lately too, is they call it a high elbow catch. So there's different drills that you can do to work on that as well. So a lot of people think of it again as that windmill, where that your arm comes up straight and you pull it down with a straight elbow. But what you actually do is after your hand has entered the water is when you start to pull, you actually are bringing your elbow up and you're bringing your forearm down. So you're in the
Right.
pool and you're trying to pull, and then your hand goes back by your hip. So once your hand has entered the water, when you're starting to pull, you should be bending your elbow.
Hmm. And is there I mean, is it very bent? Should it be sort of almost near your chest, or is it like just a
No,
smidge bent? Like,
it would be less than a 90-degree bend. The exact amount would probably differ swimmer to swimmer.
yeah.
I know last season we did a lot of drills that a lady who was a triathlete came up with a different way to swim freestyle, and she really changed her stroke so that she was very bent, and instead of pushing, bringing her hand all the way by her hip, which we would
Mm-hmm.
normally do, she would just stop short and come up again. So
Ah, that's
that was
interesting.
I can't remember her name. I think it was Carlin something, but she had spent years developing this new technique to swim freestyle, and that's what worked for her. So the
Hmm.
amount of bend will vary. You can kind of play with it and see what works for you, but yeah, you should have a bent elbow when
And
you're
I've seen
pulling
some
underwater.
people at the pool, and they have one hand on a float, and then
Okay.
the other hand they're sort of almost swimming with one hand. So is that familiar to you? And why are they doing that?
Okay. So they're probably working on their pull, because if you're doing that straight arm, if you stabilize one arm so that you can focus on one side at a time, that's often easier. So you can focus on doing your high elbow catch, finishing your stroke, coming up. So you can just kind of slow it down where you've taken away all the rotation you have to think of. You've taken away what your other arm is doing, so you can just really focus on doing the proper pull.
Hmm. And if
So that would
if
just
you
be a drill.
if you are a beginner and you're maybe thinking about going to masters, obviously they're going to show you some drills that
Yep.
you can learn these at the time. Say you're not quite ready to take the plunge and go to the masters, and you want to have a try on your own, like I did at first. Would you suggest doing drills, or would you more say just get in there and swim and get
I
comfortable
would
swimming?
suggest doing drills. What you'd probably want to do is start doing shorter distances. So even swimming 25 meters, taking 5 seconds rest, or 50 meters, and really, yeah, focus on what you're doing. You can practice some drills over 25 meters and see, because doing the drills is how you figure out the proper technique.
And what would be a
So
good starting drill?
so the one that you mentioned with the kickboard or the flutter board is a
Hmm.
good one. If you take away the flutter board, we call that catch up. So depending on how you do it, you would either have your hands wide apart, or sometimes you actually want to bring them to touch.
Hmm.
So you're doing the same thing you just described. You just don't have your hand resting on the board. So if
Oh,
you're
so you,
not very
yeah.
good at having that hand not sink down when it's not doing anything, then using the board is helpful.
Okay. And then, I mean, something I noticed quite quickly is that my legs would sink. Right, they felt like
Yes.
that I was almost going diagonally across the water.
Yes.
I don't know that I've improved that drastically. What's the proper amount of like flatness, I guess,
You
and
want to
how
be
might you
like
work on that?
flat.
Flat as you can get.
So
Okay,
one thing to think about is your head position.
right.
So you should be looking down at the bottom of the pool. So if you're straight, a lot of people will look ahead when they're swimming because they
Mm,
want to see what's coming, but your head should be in line with your body. So you're actually looking at the bottom of the pool when you're swimming. Or if your head is in the water, you should the top half of your head should be out of the water. So if you're looking
okay. Yeah,
forward, that tends to make your feet sink down.
yeah.
And if you're not kicking, which is a problem with triathletes, that can
What
also
are you
make you
trying to
sink
say?
down. Is that if you're gonna then bike and then run, it makes sense that you would save the energy, out of your
Mm,
legs. But that is a problem that like some people, like again, that I've swam with that do Ironmans and things, is they're trying to conserve their energy for their bike and their run. But you do
mm.
have to kick your feet. Otherwise, yeah, you'll end up flat.
Yeah, yeah, because your arms, like once you've done the swim, your arms are just basically doing nothing in a
Yeah.
triathlon. So it's like I'll just do the swim with my arms and save the legs. But the trouble with that, as you say, is you're gonna sink. You're gonna be
You will sink.
diagonal, and your arms are
Yeah.
gonna work twice as hard, which is gonna make your
Yeah.
heart and lungs work twice as hard, right? So it's not
Yes.
efficient to sort of spare your legs too much. But I've heard that kicking too hard can be sort of unnecessarily draining because your feet aren't in a place where they can generate tons of propulsion. So if you're kicking too hard, you
Yeah.
might be just kind of unnecessarily wasting energy.
And I think my understanding is the stronger of a swimmer you are, the more you should focus on your kick. So if you're, a high level swimmer, you should be kicking your feet because you'll know the proper rhythm and you'll know what type of kick you should be using. But if
Mm.
you're more of a beginner swimmer, you still want to kick them, but you're not spending your energy kicking when, you're going to get more benefit from trying to use the proper pull with your arms and trying to roll your body.
Mm. So it's
Um,
probably more, you want enough to keep yourself up in the water
yeah.
and not more than that until you get to a more advanced level with your swimming.
Yeah. And kick
Okay.
is something that I remember being a teenager and my parents telling me, like, why don't you kick your feet? Like, I don't know, it messes up my rhythm. And so lately I've been working more on kick, but I'm still not like a power kicker. Like they're going, but they're not. So you have to kick them in order to float, but yeah, your energy's not going there first. A good way to practice trying to, focus on what your arms are doing if you're worried about sinking is to use a pull buoy, which is a thing that goes between your legs. So that will make your your lower half float so that you can focus on what your arms are doing. And you
Oh,
can
that's why
get the
people are doing that.
arm position down. You can really focus on your pull. You can focus on your head position. I actually find it a lot easier to roll the body with a pull buoy too. So you can practice your rolling and you don't have to think about what your feet are doing. So you can work on, the top half and then your body just floats behind you.
Okay. Well, this is a nice point for me because I see people using those. And it's another thing that a little bit intimidates you, because you see the toys, the floaty stuff, and you
Yeah.
see people using them. And because you don't really know what to do, you don't want to go and grab one and do the wrong thing and look like an idiot.
Yeah.
So, and for people who are listening rather than watching, you just picked up, did you call it a pool boy?
Yes.
So
So
what is that and what do you do with it?
they're usually made of foam, although there are all kinds of different ones now, and there are different styles. So the one that I have has two foam cylinders, and there's a strap that you can adjust. So it goes in between your thighs. You can put it between your knees or between your ankles, but I like to put it up kind of right into my groin area. And you basically, some of them you have to squeeze, so it'll make you activate your leg muscles, activate your core. If you lose the squeeze, then the pull buoy flies away.
Oh, so
But
it
it
actually
is,
helps you with your technique in that sense as well, because you're
yeah,
becoming more like a cylinder kind of thing as opposed to like a
yeah,
flailing kind of
yeah. So
octopus
you
kind
have
of
to.
thing.
There's different styles. The style that I have is the only one that I like. I don't like the other ones, and I think it's because I have very small, skinny legs, so they just pop
Mm.
out.
So
Whenever I do
you
a
might have to
turn,
play
they fall
with
out.
different pool boys to find the
Yeah,
one that works for you. Okay, because yeah, the
yeah.
one you have there has almost like it's two cylinder form things
Yeah,
and
it's
then like
too.
a strap between them. Whereas before, I
Yeah.
think I've seen it's more like one form thing with sort of a bump at
Yes.
either end.
Yeah. So those are very popular. That's more of what I see. I don't know why. I've never asked anyone why they prefer that one, but yeah, you just put it between your legs and it helps your back half float, so you can focus on what your top half is doing.
So that'll allow you to work more on your rolling, as we talked about, sort of
Yeah,
twisting
and
from
you're
the hips.
rolling and on
Yeah,
your pull and on
your
your head
pulse, so you're not,
position
yeah.
and
And then the head position, we want, half the head out the water, and we want to be looking down at the
yes.
bottom of the pool when we're swimming. And then, so say that's going to help you work on your top half. These are all
Yep.
good tips for me. And then what would you do if you had the leg sinking problem that I mentioned? How would you work on that, and how would you know if you were doing it well?
So working on getting your top half in the right position should help with your leg sinking, and then again
Ah, okay.
working on the kick. Those are I've been thinking about that for a few days, and those are the only things that I know of, because for me it's just something that I think I've overlearned, so I don't know how else to give advice on that.
Well, when
I
I
don't have a problem with sinking, so
right,
I don't
what
know.
I so the thing I wonder about when I'm swimming. So I've worked on my kicking to try and get my legs to come up a bit, and I feel like they do. I never quite know when I'm swimming, should my feet remain in the water or should sort of one foot be popping up
Yeah.
over the surface each time?
You want to try to keep them under the water. And
Oh,
if you're practicing doing kick with a kickboard, your feet should mostly be in the water, and you should have a fairly small splash, because if you're bringing your foot out of the water, well, now when you're bringing it down, you're using energy, but you're not actually displacing any water. So you're supposed to do
okay, yeah,
small, quick kicks just under the surface of the water.
yeah. And
So if
then
you have a
you
huge
said,
splash, you're just wasting energy.
yep. So I've been doing that because I thought that was good because it meant that my feet were up. But that's yeah, that makes sense because it's not going to push me
Yeah.
forward at all, is it? Because my feet need to be in the water to
No,
propel me
and
forward.
you'll get very tired.
Okay, well, this is good to know. So, and then you said, did you say kickboard there?
Yeah, like a kickboard or a flutterboard is just something, those floaty things that you would hold on to when you're kicking. Um,
Yes. Okay.
yeah, I
So
call them a
you
flutterboard, or yeah, a kickboard.
okay. Yeah, I think most people are familiar with those, and that's the one
Yeah,
toy I've had the guts to pick up at the pool and have a go with because I kind of felt like I knew what to do with it. But I
yeah,
haven't tried with the pool boys because I was. But if we've got the pool boy and a flutter board, they sound like good ways for beginners to work on their technique. And is
yeah.
there anything else toy wise that, or shoot, is that pretty much it?
Those are kind of the main ones. Some people like to use fins or flippers, like kind of what you'd see a scuba diver wear.
Oh, okay.
Um, those can be helpful if you are struggling with your kick. So if you put a pair of fins on, especially the long ones, and your foot is coming out of the water, it'll be really obvious that you're not actually doing anything efficient to kick. So then you
Ah,
can work
okay.
on doing a small kick under the water. Um, I think that swimming, like doing like a regular stroke with fins on, can be a helpful way to focus on your kick so that maybe you don't sink as much.
Hmm.
I hardly ever wear fins. I wear them like once a year, so I'm not a great person to ask about them, but I do have people that I swim with that will wear them every time they do kick, because they want to focus on, resistance training, or because
Hmm.
they just struggle if they do kick without fins. So fins can be helpful if you're struggling with your kicking.
Okay, cool. And then the other thing I've seen people use at the pool is they have something on their hand which is kind of like flat. And do you know what I mean? And I
Like
think
a
they
hand
hold.
paddle.
It's like yeah, that.
Yeah.
So what's that?
There's different styles. I have a little one and I have a really big one.
Oh yeah.
And
Okay. So can we
so
describe that for people listening? What you've got in your
yeah,
hand there?
so the hand paddle, they're usually made of plastic. There's different styles of them. The one that I have is a piece of plastic about an inch or so wider than my hand. It's got holes in it, and there's little straps to put it on. So you
Mm-hmm.
you put it around your hand when you're swimming. So it would look like this if you can see
Mm-hmm.
that. So what it'll do is it's helpful when you're working on pull. So I usually would only use the hand paddles when I'm using a pull buoy, and
Okay.
it helps you have your hand enter the water properly. They do make a specific type where if you have your hand entering the water the wrong way, the paddle will fall off. I don't have those
Oh, okay.
ones.
Yeah.
But you basically, if you're not entering with your hand, flat, if you're turned, well, you're not going to notice any pull from your paddle, where it's meant to increase the surface area of your hand. So you can focus more on doing your pull and actually moving more water with it and getting your hand in the right position. And
Mm.
then if you're a more experienced swimmer and you want to add some resistance for strength training, well, if you put a really big paddle on, now you've got
Oh,
a
okay.
big surface area so that you're moving a lot more water. There's a lot more resistance. So
Yeah.
it's a lot harder. So I
Right.
think that
Okay.
they recommend smaller paddles. Smaller hand paddles are better for beginners just because if you don't really know what you're doing and you slap a really big paddle on there, that might just be too much.
Right.
They often have these at pools too. Um, Sometimes they're kind of hiding.
Hmm.
So they're usually over where they have kickboards and pull boys and all the other kind of toys.
How much are you looking at spending on, some things like hand paddles, pool boys?
I
I mean,
think
a
my pool
kickboard you can
boy
just get at the
was,
pool.
yeah, I think my pool boy was $16. I bought it online. Hand paddles, I want to say like 20 to 30, although I got mine as a gift, so I'm not exactly sure of the price, but generally they're not terribly expensive.
Man, anyone who is, getting into triathlon will be relieved at the price of
Yeah.
swimming equipment. Like compared to the bikes and the stuff related to the biking,
Oh,
which is just
yeah.
insane. This is really nothing. So this is good stuff. It's like goggles,
Yeah.
some shorts, and it's a
Bathing
couple of
suits are
toys.
expensive.
Oh, okay.
50 to $90. Like bathing suits are the most expensive part.
And you
But
want a training
yeah,
one and I guess we call it like a performance one.
you could do it your triathlon and your performance one. Like if you were a serious, pool swimmer who was going to meets, you might want a performance one, but or I guess really serious about your triathlon too.
But you mean you could do your race in your training gear
Yeah. Oh yeah.
essentially. So really you should just start with the training gear and then
Yeah.
get more if you
Get
want it.
more
Okay.
at if you want it. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's answered all of my questions. That was super awesome. Can I just check my little list and
Oh yeah,
make
absolutely.
sure we got everything?
I don't remember. I mean, you asked me about critical swim speed, but I don't know anything about that. So,
That was something I came across. It's essentially a way of just, and that's probably a good question. Do you look much when you go to these masters sessions?
yeah.
Something I have trouble with when I swim, especially at first. I got a little better since I did some like testing to try and work out my different swim speeds that I should go.
Okay.
Um, Pacing is very tricky. Do you go more of,
Yes.
okay, the coach says, you're gonna do what do they say? Do they say you're gonna do 4 lengths as fast as you can? You're gonna try and hit X, Y, or Z pace? Like how does that work?
Yeah, so often he gives us a time. So he'll say you're going to do 4 by 100 meters on this amount of time. So we'll just say 2 minutes, which is kind of slow for some people. So if you're going to swim 100 meters in 2 minutes, what that means is you swim your 100 meters, you get to the wall, and then whatever amount of time you have left until it's been 2 minutes since you started. So he kind of sometimes he'll give you a specific time to go on, like the 2 minutes, or they'll
Mm-hmm.
say, 10 seconds rest in between.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the level that you're at, usually he goes kind of lane by lane. Okay, you guys are going to do 2 minutes. You're going to do
Ah,
145.
okay.
You'll do, a shorter distance on the same amount of time. So you are kind of doing interval training. So you would swim, you take a bit of a rest. So what you can do, there's time clocks at every pool. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of how you figure out is if I know I'm swimming 100 meters in 2 minutes, well, when I touch the wall, I'm going to look up and see, well, how much rest do I have? Like, how long did that take me? And
Mm-hmm.
if I get, 20 seconds rest, okay, great. That's a good amount of time to recover with swimming. And then you go again. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
that time you were slower. So you only had 15 seconds rest. So, for the third one, well, I have to go a little bit quicker than I did for that last one. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Pacing, it definitely takes practice. You can buy goggles that will like have a time clock kind of thing that you can
Really?
see. Um,
Oh, that's pretty
Things
cool.
like that you're not allowed to use in competitions. So a lot of people don't use them because then you don't actually learn how to pace yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing to pace is doing like build. So what you would do is for the start of your 100 meters, the first 25, you're going to go nice and easy. the second 25, you're going to try to go a little bit quicker, the third one a little bit quicker. So you're trying to build your speed throughout. That way
Hmm.
you're not giving all of your energy at the beginning and then you run out of gas at the end. So those are other kind of ways to
Yeah.
pace, but it does take practice.
Yes, because it's not like, running or biking where you can just constantly look at your watch and
Yeah.
um yeah, it's almost like you get the hang of like you look at the pull clock, and
Yeah.
then you do your interval, whatever it is, and then you look back at it and you have to try and work out like how long it took you and whether you were
Yeah.
trying to whether you met the pace that you were going for. I found that very
Yeah.
tricky. And I think as well, because it's harder to feel when you're swimming, it's certainly at first, because you don't have the sweat and the warmth, you can't feel your breathing as
Yeah.
easily. It's harder to know how hard you're actually working. So sometimes, it's like in my little plan, it's like do 400 meters as hard as you can. And after like 25 meters, I'm like, dear Lord, I can't keep this up. Do you know what I mean? I'm going way harder than I need to because I can't really feel how
Yeah.
hard I'm going.
So, and that is something that can, like, again, it takes some practice. The helpful thing about like swimming with masters is that you're swimming generally with people that are a similar speed as you.
Hmm.
So what you can do is you can kind of tell, like, okay, you usually leave 5 seconds after the person ahead of you, so they're about 5 meters ahead. So then you can kind of tell, well, he's like, Bob is way far ahead of me. Like, I should probably pick up the pace here. Or like, oh, I've caught up to him. So either he's going too slow or I'm going too
Oh,
fast.
right.
So
Okay. So
you can
you
also
actually,
use the
yeah.
people around you. Like if you're having trouble pacing because you're new to it, then that is one thing, is you can kind of use the person around you. Or I guess if you were lane swimming, you could kind of do the same thing. Is
Yeah, that steers you wrong though sometimes because it's very
it
like
can,
people sort
yeah.
of self-assign there, don't they? So sometimes you get people who are like crazy fast in the middle or in the fast lane, and some of
Yes.
them like they really shouldn't be in that lane. Do you know what I mean? So it can be
Yeah. So
misleading. And
that's that's one of the reasons I don't like lane swimming, is because you don't know who you're swimming with, you don't know what workout they're doing, you don't know if they're actually in the right lane. So like the nice thing
mm,
about masters is if one day I go to the pool and there's a whole bunch of fast people, faster than me already there, well, I'm going to go in a slower lane.
right.
But now maybe I'm going to go first because I know I'm faster than these people. So then you kind of get to know the speed of people that you swim with. Or if someone is the same speed as you can be like, okay, well, I'm tired today, so you go first and then I'll just
Mm.
slowly swim behind. So you don't it's not as frustrating as when you just go with the general public when everybody's doing their own thing.
And that is a bit frustrating. Like, I don't want to sound
It
like a
really is.
whiner, but I'm sure other people get frustrated with me, but it can be like, sometimes I will go after work, so I'm a little tired anyway, and I've got a certain
Yeah.
workout I want to do, and, the pool's a bit busier. There's maybe two or three people in the lane, and we're all swimming different speeds, taking different rests,
Yeah.
and it can be a little annoying.
Yeah. It is.
And
I
then
don't like
sometimes
it.
people do this like big wide swing and like smack you in the head or hit your arm as they're swimming, as you swim
That
past each
happens
other.
anyway. I hear that that's good training for open water triathlons. Let's
Oh,
just
that's
get
a good
used to
point.
getting hit
Yeah.
by people, but that will happen like regardless. I've hit people with my little hand paddle
Oh,
several
man.
times just because, yeah, if you both swing at the same time, or
Yeah.
sometimes what'll happen is you'll kick somebody under the lane rope, like if you're doing a breaststroke kick,
Yeah.
because your feet come out wider, so as you swim by you just give somebody a kick, or
Hmm.
like it happens all the time.
So it's par for the course. And if you're going to be a swimmer, you got to learn to take those little irritations on the chin. So that's normal.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Okay.
part of it. And like generally people are okay, and like usually like someone says sorry and you're like, what are you talking about? And you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that you hit me 5 minutes
Mm.
ago. Like it's So yeah, usually people aren't bothered by it.
Well, no, I mean, that's a good point because, like, obviously you've been swimming for years, it's happened hundreds of times. But me, the first time I hit someone's hand, I
Yeah.
was like really embarrassed. I thought I'd done something wrong, maybe swung my hand
Yeah,
into
it
their lane
happens
or
all the
something.
time.
Right, yeah.
So usually like if I was just doing, lane swimming with the public, like if we stopped, I would apologize because I don't know them and I don't know,
Mm.
yeah, I don't want to, if you're new to swimming and I've hit you, I don't want to scare you away or anything
Mm.
like that. So but yeah, generally like at masters or things, like not a big deal.
Okay, right. Okay, that's good to know.
Especially when
So,
you're doing butterfly.
oh yeah, right. I mean, we didn't really touch on other strokes because I mean, most people
Yeah.
were talking about runners getting into swimming. That, like you said, they're mostly going to do freestyle, and for
Yeah.
triathletes listening and watching, they're not going to swim breaststroke for their swim leg. So,
No, and I mostly swim freestyle as well. I've been trying to make myself lately do the other strokes too, but yeah, like it's freestyle is basically everybody's favorite.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
I guess it seems the easiest to me. I mean, I don't even know if I can do the other strokes.
There's more, again, if you're new and you don't know the technique, you might as well master freestyle and get efficient at that. If you're just going to do triathlons and things, then worry about doing like backstroke and whatever crazy fool does butterfly in a triathlon. I mean, more power to them, but that's not the best way to swim it.
This has been super helpful. Like
Oh, that's good. I'm
many of these
happy.
questions, like I sort of learned the answers, but even I've learned quite a bit. And they're just these questions that you're just kind of embarrassed to ask. And I think that's part of the reason that a lot of runners, especially injured runners, when I'm trying to convince them to go and try some
Yeah.
swimming, they don't because there's all these little things that we don't know, and we don't want to ask and we
Yeah.
don't know who to ask. And so I think that's really helpful. So thank you for going
And
through all
yeah,
that.
and I've noticed over the years that runners, a lot of them don't like swimming. Um, and it's a lot different. The breathing is a lot different, which I know has been a barrier for some friends that I've had that run marathons, is they
Mm-hmm.
can't figure out how to breathe when they're swimming because
Mm.
it's different than running.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that because I've heard some people do have trouble with that at first. I guess I didn't really. I
Yeah.
did when I went to open water, a lot of
Okay.
trouble with the breathing, but I think that was more anxiety. The water was cold. I would put my head under and I couldn't keep my head under. So I've had a lot
Okay.
of trouble with that I've just kind of got through with sort of graded exposure. But I've heard that a lot of people, like when they first start swimming, they can't keep their breath because they're not able to time their breath. Like when you're running, you breathe when you
Yeah.
want, right? Whereas when you're swimming, it's
Yes.
like sort of in sync with your stroke.
Yes.
Is it just practice? Is there any way to work on it? Like,
It's practice. A couple of things to remember. You breathe out through your nose into the water.
hmm
Something that is helpful for people sometimes is to hum. So you would hum while you're breathing out. Um,
also, you don't breathe through your mouth when you're breathing
you
out.
inhale through your mouth.
Okay. And then you
You
close your
exhale
mouth.
into the water, yeah, through your nose.
Mm.
You want to make sure that you've breathed out all of your air into the water so that when you turn your head to inhale, you don't have to exhale and then inhale again because that's going
hmm
to really slow you down and then you'll swallow water, which I've done.
Ah, yeah.
So yeah, you exhale through your nose into the water and then you breathe in through your mouth. When I was a kid, I used to breathe out through my mouth into the water
hmm
and then inhale through my mouth, and that doesn't seem to work. It's a really good way to get water in your nose, which then kind of confuses things. But also, you're breathing out through your mouth, so your mouth is already kind of open, and then you're going to inhale, and
hmm
there's just the timing isn't quite right there. So
Mm. So
you
you're
should
more
be
likely to
exhaling.
choke and drink water, breathe
Yeah,
water. Okay. So if we have convinced some runners, or
yeah.
we've got some triathletes interested in getting into some joining in with the Masters Club, what should they do? How do they go about it? Specifically for your club, or more generally if they're not around here?
So specifically for our club, a good thing to do would be the Red Deer Masters Swim Club does have a website. We're upgrading the website in the next few months. I don't know if you can provide a link to the website,
Yeah, I can put that
um,
in the description.
because there is a like contact us kind of information email. You can even just send you a message or me a message and say you want to come to a practice and we can give you the information. You are able to come in and try one or two practices and then maybe register in January or something.
Okay.
The registration is online, and with COVID you have to register online. If you just wanted to drop in for a practice, you don't have to be registered at this point in time.
hmm
And yeah, Roy is our club president. He's quite helpful. I did a couple of years ago email a master's club in Calgary. I don't remember which one. I also like I found them through Google, and they had a contact us button too. So
But it's going to be pretty standard. Like you Google, your town, and I know
yeah,
Shayne, who
and
asked the question,
masters.
is in Ottawa. So if you put in Ottawa Masters Swimming, and then you look for something that's in a pool near you, and then reach out to the club,
Yeah,
and then it's probably going to have a similar structure to what you said, 2-3
yeah,
sessions a week, and they'll put you in the right lane, and you can be anything from a complete beginner who could only just swim to quite a high
yeah.
level swimmer.
Yeah, the club that I messaged in Calgary, if you were trying to register, they asked for the time it took you to swim 100 meters of freestyle, so 4 lengths of
Oh, okay.
freestyle. So that was so they kind of knew about what level you were at.
Right, okay.
Some of them, like we actually, the Red Deer Silver Sharks also has a Facebook page. So looking social media, some of them may have that as well. Some of them might not.
Depending on how old school they are.
Well, advertising, like for our club, advertising has been a bit of a struggle. We actually just recently got a grant from the city of Red Deer, so we'll be able
Mm.
to start doing more advertising in the next little while to try to get a little bit more known about. But that's, Google's probably your best bet.
Mm.
Or even if you just go to the pool and ask the lifeguard or ask the person at the front desk, and they'll know if there's a master's club in town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. That again, super helpful, Candace. Thank you for coming
Okay,
to
great.
talk to
I'm
us.
happy that was helpful.
I'm
Hopefully, we
gonna,
get
I'm gonna,
some runners swimming.
yeah. I'm gonna stop the recording there just a
Okay.
sec.